Have you ever noticed how some people just hold your attention when they're talking about a story that has happened in their life? It can be through content, real life, or wherever you meet them. They could be talking about the most random thing on the planet, how this auto driver scammed them yesterday, या फिर कल इस स्विगी वाले बंदे ने कैसे उनका ऑर्डर कैंसिल कर दिया था रात को, बट यू वुड फाइंड इट इंटरेस्टिंग. नाउ फॉर मोस्ट ऑफ द अदर पीपल इन योर लाइफ, इवन इफ दे आर ट्राइंग टू टॉक about the most important thing on the planet, you tend to forget what they said because it is super boring for you to listen to them for more than 2 minutes. That is because good storytellers, they don't just tell you random stories, they make you experience them. And storytelling is one of the main reasons why I was able to grow my personal brand on Instagram to over 120,000 people. And in this video, I'm going to share very simple 6 storytelling techniques that you can start using from today itself to make your content impossible to ignore. And if you want me to help you implement all of this and much more into your own content, check the first link in the description to work with me. Now, let's begin. First is to set the location and drop people into the scene. Imagine walking into a movie theater 30 minutes late and the movie has already started. The characters are already talking to each other, but you're sat in your seat having no idea of what the fuck is happening. That is exactly what happens when you don't set a location, a scene before your story begins. And most of the people start off their stories with something that is very vague. Like, so last night something interesting happened to me, or last night was the craziest night of my life. So what does this do? Absolutely nothing. It doesn't really paint a picture in the mind of the people who are watching your video or whom you are telling your story to. उनके दिमाग में कोई visual reference आया ही नहीं. Instead, start with a specific location, because the moment you mention something specific, people start to imagine themselves in your position. So for example, instead of just saying that I was on a call with one of my clients and there was this moment when she had this one breakthrough. Say this. So I was sitting with my laptop in this small coffee shop, Dadar station ke paas. The room was tapping the window of the cafe that I was sitting in, and that was a moment when my client had this one realization. Instead of just saying that I was teaching these people about how calories really work, say, I was standing in front of 50 people in this hotel conference room of JW Marriott. All of their notebooks were open and they were very interested in what I was going to say. And that was the moment when I started to talk about how calories really work. So be specific about where you were in that situation जब तुम्हारे साथ वो चीज़ हो रही थी. Add 1 or 2 sensory details. Don't do it a lot क्योंकि we don't really want the other person to be overwhelmed by what we are saying, and keep it really brief. You don't really need to describe every single thing that was happening around you, but just give them enough context to paint a picture in their mind of where the story begins. Second technique is jump straight into the action. Think about the movies that have performed the best on the blockbuster. Most of them had this one scene in the first 30 seconds जहाँ पे they drop you in a situation where there is a high stake environment. हो सकता है the main character of the movie is running for his life from some bad guys, ठीक है, जो उसके पीछे पड़े हुए हैं, और police is trying to chase this one robber, उसको अपने कब्जे में लेने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं, and that robber might be the main character. हो सकता है वो ऋतिक रोशन है, whatever it is. But at this point, you want to know what is going to happen next. You want to know कि ये हो क्यों रहा है, ये भाग क्यों रहे हैं लोग एक दूसरे के पीछे. You might think that this is contrary to the first point जिसके बारे में हमने बात करी थी कि थोड़ा सा context दो सामने वाले बंदे को before jumping straight into the story. But after you have given that little bit of context, don't waste your time rambling about every single detail that is about that story, right? All this is going to do is bore your viewer. So think of the first part that we talked about like salt, right? You add just a bit of it, enough for the person to have a context, not anything more. We all have that one friend in our friends group who talks about the most boring stories and doesn't really get to the point of what he is trying to say. Don't be that guy. So for example, instead of saying, so I was supposed to meet this investor, but before that I had to take a cab. The driver was late. I called him. He didn't really pick up. Then I finally arrived at the destination. I was waiting at the coffee shop. And then after 20 minutes, the investor finally arrived. Say this. I checked my watch 20 minutes late. My coffee had gone completely cold, and I had exactly 10 minutes left to pitch a deal that could save my business from bankruptcy. And that was a moment when the investor finally decided to walk in. Third technique is to let them hear your thoughts. Remember all of those moments from the reality shows. Jab someone says what is going on in his head, out loud to the people, and that time a scene is created. There is a lot of drama. Those are always the most engaging parts of watching that reality show, because we all know what that person is thinking, but जब वो सामने वाला उस चीज को बोलता है, translates them his feelings into words, that is what we really find interesting. So instead of just narrating all of the story in a plain context जैसे हुआ था तुम्हारे साथ, also share what you were feeling at that time और तुम्हारे दिमाग में क्या चल रहा था. And this helps to make your story feel more personal, because our thoughts, they're not really always polished, right? They're messy, they are unhinged, they are a little careless at times, but that is what makes you even more real. So instead of just saying that I was super nervous to present this idea to my potential clients, say this: I was pacing outside of the meeting room thinking, if I mess this pitch up, I'll have to explain to my partner why we need to take a small loan for our business once again. So instead of just saying, I was excited when my video started to get some views, say this: is this the video that is going to make me a crorepati and finally let people know my worth? Technique number 4 is don't just say the emotions, show it. Think of a terrible actor saying that I'm suffering or I'm very sad in this moment, but their face is just completely blank. It doesn't really show any emotions. That is exactly what you look like when you are talking about a story about the specific feeling that you felt at that time, but nothing is being conveyed through your face, through your emotions. So when you are talking about a situation that you are in your past, try imagining yourself being there right now, जिससे सामने वाला बंदा तुम्हारे इमोशंस को और अच्छे से समझ पाएगा. And instead of just saying that I was super happy when one of our clients finally got the results that he always wanted, say this: when the message came through, I literally jumped out of my chair because I could not really believe what my eyes were seeing at that moment. Keshav, who wanted to lose 15 kgs of weight before his marriage, अगले 6 महीने में did it in just the first 3 months while working with me. You see the difference? एक एग्जाम्पल मैं तुम्हें प्लेनली बता रहा हूँ कि क्या हुआ है. In the second example, I'm making you feel the same emotion that I felt in that moment. Fifth technique is use dialogue and make it more interesting. Think about when a friend tells you this gossip, okay? Which is more interesting to you? When someone says कि यार Rahul is really angry at me because I said or did that one thing. Or if he says this, यार Rahul looked me dead in the eyes, held the collar of my shirt and said, if you do this ever again, I'm done with you. I'm never talking to you again. You see, dialogue, what the other person actually said to you, जब तुम उसको बोलते हो, it brings more drama, it brings more character to the story that you're trying to tell. And this is a storytelling cheat code, which most of the great storytellers use और तुम्हें पता भी नहीं लगता है. Instead of just summarizing in a brief moment कि हुआ क्या था, they tell you exactly what the conversation was between you and the other person. Instead of just saying that a student of mine gave me a message that your course content was fantastic, say this: my student messaged me at 2 a.m. saying that I have spent thousands and lakhs of rupees on other courses but never really found them valuable. सब कुछ बिल्कुल copy pasted, same information थी. But this is the first time when I have implemented every single thing a person has taught me and seen results within the first week. And if you want your dialogue to sound even more better, exaggerate it a little bit, because real conversations are not really scripted. And what happened in that moment that you're trying to describe is not going to come out exactly the way it happened at that moment, right? So exaggerate it a little, just a notch, so it becomes a bit more dramatic and the other person also feels what you felt in that moment. Technique number 6 is stay on point. Don't ramble about everything else. We all have that one uncle in our family that we meet in every single wedding. He starts to talk about this one story but doesn't really get to the end of it. Uske beech mein he gets distracted and starts talking about how this one girl he was in love with in college but unka kuch hua nahi. How his brother took this money that was supposed to be given to him, but उसने उसके पापा से उसको चुरा लिया. Don't be that uncle in your content. This is a mistake that I see a lot of people make. They start with something and then end in a completely different place. Every story, every single thing that you share in between of it needs to have a purpose. Whether it is if you're trying to make someone laugh, if you are trying to impress them with something, or if you're just trying to educate them about this one concept, you need to have a clear idea of where you are going. So instead of saying, I was at this networking event, I met this really cool investor. But before I tell you that, let me tell you about the food जो वहाँ पे था. The paneer naan and momos were मज़ेदार, बहुत अच्छे. And I also saw this one influencer. I don't know if you know his name. He was also there with his girlfriend. But by this point, the samne wala person has lost interest in whatever you are trying to say. Instead, say this. I was at this networking event when I made eye contact with this one investor. We started talking about the business model that I was using. He looked at me and said, "You have the next 30 seconds to explain how your business model works, and I'm going to see if you are the right fit for me to invest." Now, you want to know what is going to happen next. You want to know कि इसके बाद क्या हुआ था story में. But that doesn't really happen if you don't get to the point of what you are saying. Now, all of this is going to be overwhelming for you अगर तुम इस सबको एक साथ अपने content में implement करने की कोशिश करोगे. So use one technique at a time and try to use that in your content business, whatever it is. If you want me to help you personally to implement all of this and much more into your content, then check the first link in the description. And if you're completely new to the game of content and have no idea where to start, watch this video next.